Do you see on your end?
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Beatrice. Sorry about that. Okay. One Florida is one of 8 clinical research networks, and this is really wonderful representation of where all of the sites within those networks lie. So, as you can see, we have really nice coverage of the Eastern Seaboard as well as parts of the Midwest and the West. We are trying to expand, obviously, into the Western states. I personally would love to have a site in Hawaii and Alaska because it means I got to visit there. But please know that the CRNs are continuously growing, and we are trying to get other partners across the state to have a good representation of the United States. So, what is PCORNet? As I said before, it's meant to be a network of networks to help accelerate research. Um, PCORNet itself has what's called the PCORNet study designation, which allows for these studies to receive special treatment, I would say, within PCORNet. So a PCORNet study designation means that has patient engagement component. It's using OneFlorida or it's using the PCORNet infrastructure, and then they're willing to those PIs are willing to explain lessons learned back to the PCORNet audience to help break down barriers, further research, and then help expedite things in the past. So a big part of Cornet is also just constantly learning and trying to find new and innovative ways to help accelerate research in the future. And accelerate research really meaning from an administrative standpoint, so helping accelerate IRBs, contracting, study startup. A large part of that is our big focus within PCORNet. PCORNet designated studies do not have to be funded by PCORI. They can be funded by NIH, CDC, FDA, industry, foundation. It's just having those 3 key tenets, again, of patient engagement, use of infrastructure, as well as willing to divulge lessons learned that allows for that PCORNet designation. This is the requirements and process for creating a PCORNet designated study. Again, anyone can have a PCORNet designated study and then have the benefits of having that support among the networks. This 5-step process over here kind of outlines how to do that by going through the PCORNet front door. If you have any questions on if you think you might have a PCORNet designated study or want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll walk you through that process. A big part of what we do at UF as the coordinating center for OneFlorida is actually do the PCORNet designation applications, which are very simple for investigators. And again, this is what makes PCORNet's designated study, using the PCORNet name and logo, allowing for that network support, having collaborations among OneFlorida as well as other CRNs such as STAR, which includes Duke and Vanderbilt, or perhaps LPHI, or I'm sorry, perhaps ReachNet, which is Louisiana Public Health Institute, Tulane. We want to make sure we're fostering collaboration amongst networks and having that shared learning experience. So here are some select PCORNet studies that we've had over the years. One Florida has participated in each one of these, which have been very exciting. We had a large boost to PCORNet designated studies as well as use of PCORNet through COVID. So in 2020 and 2021, we saw a very large use of the network. So as horrible as COVID was, sometimes it was a bit of a blessing for PCORNet because it really showed the strength of the network and how quickly sites can be we can do study startup and implement clinical trials research as well as data research to really make an impact in doing studies. So one thing I also wanted to point out, and I have this at the end of the slides as well, if you're interested in learning more, is the PCORI Category 3 standing funding announcement. So this is up to $10 million in direct cost. Studies must address national priorities of health, include 2 or more clinical research networks, which mean it would qualify as PCORNate designated study. Again, willing to share the progress and share lessons learned, as well as using PCORNet infrastructure and resources, such as using the common data model, a single IRB, or having patient engagement sources. So the broad pragmatic category is really interesting because you can really develop any type of research that you're looking for with a special emphasis on comparative effectiveness research and have a very large pot of money that you can apply for. It is a very rigorous process, but very rewarding. And we we have had a few category threes that have been awarded amongst the CRNs. We have one within One Florida called the Restore Project, which is funded by UAB. So again, just wanted to point this out because this is a really special funding opportunity. There's 3 cycles a year. With applications in January, May, and September. And the link for that PFA will be at the end of these slides. One thing I really would like to point out as another resource for PCORNet and One Florida in general is we have, over the last 2 years, really focused on these PCORNet data reports. And I have the link here, and let me share where it goes to. So these PCORNet data reports are meant to be a tool for researchers where you can really dig in and look at the data that currently is available, not only within One Florida, but across all of the CRNs. And there are special focus areas, so mental behavioral health, maternal morbidity, mortality, pediatric telehealth, and then intellectual and developmental disabilities. So PCORI does have a special interest and focus in these areas, and you will see topical PFAs around these areas. But if you have a special research interest, want to learn more about what data is available, these data reports are really great tools and resources that show you how the data was derived, what the conclusions were, and then the data types within PCORNet. All of these computable phenotypes are still available and can be looked at and used by investigators. So if that's also something you'd be interested in, we'd be happy to facilitate that. But again, this is a really great tool and resources for investigators to use. And I do have this linked here in the slides as well. Okay, so now that we had an overview of PCORNet, I would like to discuss One Florida in general. So a big thing with One Florida is we are looking to solve problems in pragmatic ways. So what type of antibiotics should my child take for ear, nose, and throat infections is a topic area and research study that we've actually done within the network. How do we best identify and treat hypertension within our populations that we have within One Florida? How can we more accurately screen for lung cancer and not get so many false positives? How do we best use AI to unlock EHR data to link patients with the right cancer clinical trials? Again, all of these questions are actually research we've been able to do within One Florida using primarily the One Florida Data Trust with some emphasis and additional help from recruitment and clinical trials. The other unique thing about One Florida that I think the FSU folks would really enjoy is that we also have Florida Medicaid data within the One Florida Data Trust that can be linked to EHR. And so one question we've also had is if Florida Medicaid data has an extended postpartum health coverage, are these women getting care? Is this really improving their health? So these are all very pragmatic questions that we can answer now using the resources we have available within One Florida. So again, this is kind of our roadmap on how we like to use our infrastructure. So identifying our study populations, comparing treatments, drugs, and devices with an emphasis on comparative effectiveness research, using that information to conduct real-world clinical trials, and then translating that evidence into practice. A very large emphasis within One Florida is having patient partners and making sure that we are engaging those that are contributing their data as well as willing to enroll in a clinical trial, and that they're not only heard along the way, but they're active parts of trial development, feedback on implementation, as well as making sure that they can use dissemination tools to help spread any evidence or findings that we have for those projects. So that's returning results participants is also a very big area for us as well. So currently, our One Florida Data Trust is a statewide clinical research network, and we have 17 current partners across One Florida Plus. The majority of those are in the state of Florida, but we also have Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, California, and we just recently added Minnesota in our phase 4 award, which we received January 1st of this year, and we'll continue for 4 more years. So amongst all of these different sites, we have around 16 million patients within the state of Florida and around 22 million patients across our entire network, which is really exciting. I always like to say we lean very heavily on the plus of One Florida Plus now that we're expanding to other states. But as I mentioned previously, we are also trying to make sure we're providing coverage for the United States as PCORnet, and so we're now kind of gobbling up some partners that are outside of the state and even outside of the Southeast. But just looking at the state of Florida, we have some amazing coverage, and we also recently added Jackson Health System in Miami, which is the largest safety net hospital system in the country. So we do also have a very nice view of what the state of Florida looks like as well. And as I mentioned, we also have Medicaid as well as mother baby data from the state. So these are just some high-level numbers of what we have within the data trust. Again, I actually think that number is close to 16 million for Florida with a total of around 22 million patients. This data is linked to census tract data. As Chenrong mentioned, we also have this link to exposome data. Chenrong is our exposome database expert. So any questions that you may have about that, I'm happy to direct you to him because he's much smarter than I am on those areas. We also have healthcare claims. We have limited tumor registry data, which can be used for any cancer trials. And the other really exciting part is while the One Florida Data Trust is a HIPAA limited data set, meaning we do not store PHI, patients can be re-identified with approval from the partner sites if you wish to use it for a eligibility query, a recruitment query, and then we can also return patient level data in an LDS format. And as I mentioned, we also have this linked with mother baby data, which has also proved some really interesting return of results in our family data center within health outcomes and biomedical informatics, which is our department. So I want to talk a little bit of how this data is stored, transferred, and used, because I think that's really important when understanding kind of the limitations of the data. So as you see here on the left-hand side, we have all of our electronic health record data from all of our partners, which is really the foundation of our data trust. And that's where we get that huge number of patients from, is we have EHR data in a HIPAA limited format starting in 2012 to now, so 13 years of data. The data is also deduplicated across all of the partners. So if I receive care at the University of Florida, then I receive care at Tallahassee Memorial and then the University of Miami, you will see me as one individual patient with my medical history across my lifetime of care and be able to track my outcomes across all platforms, which is really exciting. We have limited patient-reported outcomes data, linked mother-baby data, our exposome, Medicaid, and some Medicare data, as well as the Datavant death data through Veritas, which is helping us complete that death outcomes data. As you all know, can be very tricky to receive from hospitals. So that is helping us provide the death outcomes. Again, that's all added into the data trust, and we have a privacy preserving record linkage software from Datavant, which uses the 18 HIPAA identifiers to create a unique hashing algorithm that is run at each institution to de-identify the patient, but then create this unique link so then if we ever do need to re-identify the patient, we can. That hashing algorithm is done once at the local institution, and then once the data is transferred to the University of Florida, as the coordinating center, we run a hashing algorithm again. So we actually have two layers of protection to make sure that no one can be re-identified at the University of Florida or through any data releases for projects. When we release data, we also add a unique study identifier and do not release the One Florida patient ID. So again, there's just an extra layer of protection to make sure no one is able to re-identify patients at an individual level. In order to access this data, it can be queried through I2B2. You can submit a full research application to see do a feasibility assessment to see if we have the data you're looking for. And then once we have an executive committee approval and an IRB approval, we can then release that data set again as a HIPAA limited data set, or if you need re-identification, we will work with you and our partners to re-identify as needed and provide you that data back. So this is what the data would look like. It is currently, or it comes back to you in the PCORNet Common Data Model. Version 7.0 will be implemented, I believe, in July. So if you click the link here, it'll show you the Common Data Model, and then you can also look at the new version 7.0. It's just expanding the Common Data Model to include some additional patient-reported outcomes as well as an expanded demographic table. So nothing is being taken away. It's just an expansion of the common data model. When we release data, we ask the type of tables that you would be interested in, and then you can receive these are all the variables within the tables. So that way you're not getting this huge bolus of data that's unwieldy. We can target which specific tables you're looking for that are applicable to your research. Um, so I'm going to just very quickly move through some of these examples of studies that we've had within OneFlorida. You can also read through these, but I want to make sure we have enough time for questions as well as the I2B2 presentation. But each one of these studies actually answers the question that I had mentioned at the beginning of the OneFlorida presentation on the practicality of and pragmaticness of how we use OneFlorida data as well as the clinical trials component to answer these research questions. Excuse me. So this is actually one of the first studies to use PCORNet in general. Which was our adaptable project. And that was looking to see if 31 milligrams or 325 was more effective at reducing the risk of heart attack, death, or stroke, while also being protective against any negative outcomes such as bleeding. We found that there was no difference in patient safety, but that there were fewer side effects with 81 milligrams. But really, the really cool part about Adaptable, I was the project manager for Adaptable, so I'm a little biased, but the cool part about Adaptable is that we were able to recruit over 15,000 patients across all of the CRNs, with UF being one of the highest recruiting sites. And then we maintained that recruitment from 2016 to 2022 and followed patients for 2 years for outcomes data. Everything was done online. It was a virtual recruitment process. It was a really, really neat project. This was one of the other studies to use the data trust for the first time, and this is what we alluded to at the beginning is, what type of antibiotic is best for URI within children. And again, using the data only, they were able to identify the results for this project and show and produce actual next steps that can be translated into evidence with showing that narrow spectrum antibiotics actually work just as well as broad spectrum, but had fewer side effects in children. The last one I'm going to talk about is actually the Active 6 project. Active 6 was a really great example of how we could use both the data trust and the clinical trials arm of OneFlorida to merge together and do something great. So Active 6 was a COVID-19 project where we were looking to see what already approved FDA drugs could be used to help prevent or I'm sorry, help reduce symptom severity after COVID-19 infection. So these patients were positive for COVID-19. They had to be within the first week of having a positive test. They were randomized to different drug arms to determine whether or not those drugs had any help with reducing symptom severity. We looked at ivermectin. We looked at different nasal sprays, as well as metformin. We had a number of different arms. This was a stepwise design that we actually were able to activate as new evidence for other FDA-approved drugs were becoming available. And then I will stop there. The rest of these, again, are primarily data heavy projects that we're able to use natural language processing, large language models, and AI using paired with the One Florida Data Trust to answer their research questions. And I'm happy if there's any, questions about these, I'm happy to provide more feedback and put you in touch with the PIs. These are some of our funders within One Florida. And then, as I mentioned previously, this is the Broad Pragmatic Trials PFA link if you're interested in that at all. I will stop there and pass it back over to Dr. Hay if for the I2B2 demonstration.
Sure. So, Brittany, do you want me to do the I2B2 demonstration, or you have some slides to do that? I have some slides for demo
Yeah, if you
I2B2
have
on my
some
end.
slides, that
Yeah,
would be great. I do not
sure,
have those
sure.
currently available. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I will share some of the slides that I have on my end to the people here on this call. I think my presentation is mainly focused on introducing our team and then talking about how we can support One Florida studies and how we can support investigators to perform the feasibility evaluation on which can be performed by us at FSU side before we reach out to UF for additional information. So first of all, just some quick introduction about our CTSA BIRD team. CTSA is funded by the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. Has been there for we have been supporting this for about 6 years since 2019, and we have a very strong team of investigators and researchers who have already substantial experiences with NIH funding. And we also have a variety of ways to get access to us through our website, through our our email, and also our ticketing systems. So our current team members include me as right now the team lead. I'm more focused on leading the informatics side, focused on helping researchers get access to our EHR data, not only including One Florida but also other data sources such as all of us. And recently, we have also get another data access called Critical, which is another new EHR data integrated data from 6 different healthcare systems focused on critical care. And we also have team members. Dr. Hong Yan Cao is focused on high-dimensional genomics and survival analysis and the longitudinal data analysis. Dr. Deb Sinha and Dr. Jabajoti Sinha, he's an endowed professor here at FSU Statistics, and he's currently leading the biostat core of the BIRD team. And I'm not gonna kind of read his expertise. He's working closely with Dr. Fanas Salatikia from the Office Research Development and Office Research. And also we have Dr. Michael Killian from Social Work, Dr. Hong Yu Miao from College of Nursing. They all provide our statistical and study design support to our investigators. And we also work very closely with UF CTSA, our DDDC team, which has a lot of wonderful colleagues familiar with a variety of the kind of study design and the statistical analysis methods. So we work really closely. So these are some of our current service categories, including research trial design, electronic data health record access through One Florida, mainly providing One Florida services and the support. And also we also can be consulted for health informatics and AI methodologies, and also providing biostatistics and bioinformatics support at the consultation service. So we do have some resources I think I can mention to you. I will also share these slides with Brittany's slides after this meeting. So we have a Canvas website, which is a self-enrolled Canvas website that provides educational material and seminar recordings of BIRD workshops, including some workshops on One Florida Data Trust and other things. And if you're interested in using our services, certainly you can use our ticketing systems with this link. You can also easily find this link by just Google FSU CTSA BIRD. You can find this link, and then we have a request. Feel free to send the information to us, and we'll try to respond to you within 24 hours. And we are trying to also provide support with our FSU investigators who are part of BIRD. And if we cannot help you because of lack of expertise on certain areas, we'll also collaborate with our UF colleagues, including Brittany's team, and also the RDC team for a variety of different support. So so for OneFlorida, I'm just gonna jump to this uh, part on the type of the kind of current workflow of the data request. And then I'm gonna give you some example of I2B2 query. So let me share my screen again. So this is how our current workflow looks like for OneFlorida studies. So if you are interested in using OneFlorida data trust for your research, I would really highly recommend you to submit a service ticket to FSU CTSA service request form. So this form should give you information about we want to collect information about your study, about your cohort, and also about your type of service you want to request. And if you choose data access, EHR data categories within this ticketing system, you will come to us and we will help you assess study feasibility using I2B2 and discuss the study team with the study team on the front door request and also the regulatory process. And after you are happy about the study feasibility based on I2B2 results, we will encourage you and work with you to submit your ticket through OneFlorida Plus online application portal. And there are actually two different applications you can submit. One is is a front door service, which provides you an additional level of scrutiny within the OneFlorida data trust. For example, as I can show you in our slides, for OneFlorida, if you're using I2B2, you can look at the very simple, patient breakdown with respect to age group, gender, and race and ethnicity. But if you want to look at more specific information about the cohort, you will need to contact the OneFlorida front door team so they can help you refine the query to give you even more specific detail about your feasibility. And there's also another application called the infrastructure application. And that is application typically is used for the actual application for the use of data. So you can either use that application to get data approved and evaluated and approved by the executive committee of OneFlorida, and they will provide you with a letter of intent for you, a letter of support for you to use in your grant applications. And if you already have an NIH funded project or other funded project that you have funding to use the data set, you can also submit that data request, and they will work with you closely to get you the data. So there's other steps within the OneFlorida team that make sure that there's a sufficient level of regulatory approval and the facility assessments before people work on this actual data query. So so they will provide level of support and an estimate of the actual cost associated with a data request. And because each data request is different, it depends on your nature of study and also depends on complexity of the query. They will provide you with the estimate, including the administrative cost and also the hourly cost for the data request. And then there should be two things that are major in this process. One is front door team will also review and help you with refining query because sometimes the investigators may not be able to fully understanding the data set. So there are questions that need to be asked by the study team for you to provide additional details to the data study request. And then once that's completed, the study team will need to submit a full IRB protocol with the related documents, including a PCORNet CDM related elements request, including all the variables you're requesting from OneFlorida and also other information you need to submit along with your IRB. And our team at FSU can also help you review your IRB protocol to make sure that it meets the expectation for IRB process. And then once our FSU IRB approve the study team will reach out to OneFlorida team for data usage agreement. And the DUA will need to be signed by both FSU and UF designated official to be approved. And if there's no issue, an invoice will be generated and paid, and the data set will be prepared and delivered to the study team via SFTP. So this is a service that allows individual researcher to access the data set through this a web link. It's a web link, and people just need to sign in, use a credential, and then generate download data from that SFTP server. So and then I2B2 again, it's an important a web-based interface that allows people to identify potential study cohort using clinical data sources. This could intentionally hope intended it's intended for protocol development for grant RB submissions, because RB sometimes most of the time they want you to submit the study sample size, and it will give you the patient counts for your study. So there's like a lot of different type of variables you can use for I2B2. So again, I'm going to skip some slides and just want you to get to the actual example. So this is one of the interface that is primarily used in I2B2 interface. My slide's a little bit outdated. I'm not sure if this exactly follow the current version of I2B2, but I just checked like an hour ago. I think it's very close. So give you different pre-coordinate common data model tables that it allows you to use for the data query. So you can, for example, for demographics, you can query like age, ethnicity, gender, race, sex, vital stats, sexual orientation. For encounters, you can also request account like admission source, age, diagnosis, etc., encounter type. So you can also specify lab results. You can specify medication use. You can specify also procedures and the vital signs. So those are variables we can specify. And also, certainly as a FSU team, we can help you run those I2B2 queries. But if you want to get I2B2 access, you can also submit a request through like a portal that allows you to, that allows you to request I2B2 access. So an investigator at FSU, you could request this, and the UF team will help you set up Gator link credential, and also using that Gator link credential, you can log in I2B2 web interface, and then use the application within their VPN system. Some like query example. So for example, if you want to identify a children who are under 18 years of age and who have emergency department visit of Caesar between a particular range of dates, and also has a particular healthy BMI range during this ED visit, and were administered prescribed with a medication called Capra doses during the ED encounter. You can do this within I2B2 by specifying those variables. So again, this is a query interface which allows you to look at the current data tables you can query you can use for query purposes. You can also have a query previous query history. So all the previous query you executed can be reloaded, so they can generate the responses and the counts. You can actually not reproduce. You can just view the previously executed queries, and then this is a query interface. You can create different groups, and each groups will have it's basically a logic of and all the criteria within the group one will be or, and the group criteria between group one, group two, group three will be and. So you can specify, for example, age as in group one. You can specify diagnosis code in group two. You can specify lab results in group three, or medication use, and all of these conditions can be joined, can be used together to define a cohort. And then after we run this query, the results will be displayed in this result panel. In order to run the query I mentioned, people can search for diagnosis code such as Caesars and identify the related diagnosis groups. So instead of only using ICD-10, IC9 codes, which is much more fine granular, you can use a diagnosis group, which probably will be easier to use for query purposes. And then you can, as I mentioned, identify logic. So as I mentioned, if you use group one, group two, if you put every code in group one, for example, COVID-19 and diabetes code, and this will be a or status. If someone has COVID or has diabetes, this person will be considered as eligible to be included in this cohort. And if you put these two diagnoses in two different groups, and this will be a join. Only the people who have both COVID-19 and diabetes will be eligible, will be part of this. And you can also use negation. So you can say people who have COVID-19 but not having diabetes will be in the cohort if you specify this one to be a negation. So we can also set temporal constraint, saying like, for example, you have a particular date in mind that you want to specify a particular diagnosis to be between. So you can use a property to set the date of diagnosis. So this can be more specified. You can also specify a lab value. So for example, hemoglobin, you can say like, this value should be less than a particular threshold value, etc. You can also set a particular encounter occurrences for particular, kind of events. Or you can also set sequence event. You can say, okay, for example, if someone must have a diagnosis first and then followed by another diagnosis, or diagnosis first followed by another lab results. You can also specify that information into your question as a temporal constraint. Um, so there are simple queries we can execute. Most of the times people would just want to look at a simple count, for people who have particular diagnosis. So this could be as simple as just providing some diagnosis code related to condition of interest. And they give you the number of patients and also will break down by gender, age group, and race, ethnicity. You can also mention, I don't exactly remember like enrollment, but you can specify other conditions. This is simple information, right? Caesar query about Caesar. So you just specify the Caesar diagnosis and age group. So people only have this age group. Between this age group and having this diagnosis will be considered as included. And then you can also specify age, at visit as the criteria. We can also specify other query kind of information like, for example, lab value, BMI to be between 18.5% to 24.9%. You can specify that by having another group and using lab value or the chart value BMI as the variable. So you can also do that and get an even closer cohort to your published interest. You can also specify encounter type. For example, you can say like, this all the things about your encounter, about your diagnosis of Caesar, and also have a BMI must be in the same financial encounter. You can also specify that, as a temporal, information in a query. So you can say this one is a temporal query. Must be in the same encounter. So you can see the number of patients are further reduced. So EHR data is longitudinal, so it has those data of service. So you can do that. You can also I think this one, what's the difference between this one? I mean, this one is I think have a particular date constraint to must be between particular time frame. And also this must be in the same encounter. So you can see the number of patients are further down. So you can always like be more specific about your specific population. So this one example give you the sequence of events. The person must first of all must be between this age group and also having this BMI range, and this person must have a Caesar first, followed by emergency permanent visit, and also followed by the diagnosis of this medication. So we can say like event one must occur before event two, and event two must occur before event three. So this could be set as a sequential event in I2P2. So, you get even smaller cohort simply because your criteria is even more restrictive. And then when I2B2 generate the results, you can actually produce a PDF version of the results, giving you all this information in this query report. So you can look at specifically what is the criteria and how did you define your cohort. And then I think that's the current version of my slides. I have a other query example I can show, but I think in the interest of time, I just want to save some time for question answering. So I have 10 more minutes. So I think we can bring people back. We already have Brittany and Chenrong here. Again, like I have to say, like my personal experience with OneFlorida has been really positive. I've used OneFlorida for over almost like 7, 8 years since I become a professor here at the FSU. And it's a fairly streamlined process. And they are creating more and more resources for people that get access to OneFlorida. So I wonder, like Brittany, I wonder, one thing I'm curious is people are very interested to learn about the funding, the structure of cost for OneFlorida. And in my previous experience, we know like if people are reusing existing computer film type that's been, pre-programmed by study team. For example, if you know like there's a team using this cohort, you are reusing this cohort, you can potentially save some cost by, not asking the like team to reprogram or writing the query. So can you kind of explain to us that process and how people should leverage this opportunity to save additional cost for query?
Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss that. So I did put our One Florida website in the chat, which has the research applications you need, requests for One Florida I2, B2, as well as our fee structure. So um, we do have a fee structure associated with all of our data pulls as well as our clinical trials component, which is explained here. We have a $3,000 one-time administrative fee, as well as a per hourly cost for analyst support, which is this 121 an hour. But yes, if you do have a previous data set that has been pulled and you would like to reuse it, we do ask that you submit a new app. Just email the One Florida front door team and let us know. And then B, we will have you submit a new application with the updated aims, but we do allow for what we do then is just charge a reuse fee, which I believe is $3,000 for the reuse fee. So that way you can reuse the data for new study aims, but you're not paying for the full price again. We do have a data use agreement that will be signed by each investigator prior to the data being released. And in that data use agreement, it does say that you are only allowed to use the data for your current study aims, and that if you do want to reuse data for different study aims, to please contact the One Florida front door team. So we do have that description also in the DUA as well.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from anyone related to One Florida? It's really nice opportunity to have their team member here with us today. Um, Katie has a question about exposome data. So I guess either Chenrong or Brittany may have some information about exposome data.
Yeah, Shinrong, would you mind describing what type of exposome data we have? And I'll see if I can pull up our current list. But if Shinrong, if you don't mind giving an overview, that would be great.
Yeah, I know Fabio has another question, so I'll give Fabio next question. I'm trying to understand what it actually question is about. But let's address Katie's question first, and then Fabio.
Oh, there you go. You're still muted, Shinrong. So do you mind?
Hi, Murtis.
Yes,
And I have slides I previously created. I'd like to share and
that'd be great.
for clarification. Yeah, give me a second.
While Shimron's looking for those, I'll just Fabio's question. So, currently we don't do an oversampling within the United States, but if you were looking to do looking for a data set that's representative of the of the country, what I would suggest is using the CoreNet front door to request data from the different CRNs. So depending on what type of data set you're looking for, you can submit that query or you can submit the query to us and we'd be happy to help facilitate that. But we can actually pull data from other CRNs and match you with investigators at those CRNs to, if you're looking for data from a specific state, population group. We don't have a large repository that can be pulled from the CoreNet level, but we can create partnerships. But I do think with One Florida, we have a pretty good representation of different groups that are seen throughout the United States as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. I'll share my screen.
Thanks so much.
Okay, right. See my Excel.
We're seeing a empty desktop screen.
Yeah, we see the
Oh
back.
my God. Yeah. How about now?
Yes, we can see it now. Thanks.
Yeah, we have almost 10 kinds of exposome data. Like the ACAG is includes PM 2.5, and there is compensations. And we can see this data source is just about the where we can download the data, like the ACAG cases, NADA, and etc. So the details, specific variables we have like the PM 2.5 and other air pollutions like carbon dioxide and like the air toxins and weekend land like the where the land is weakened during 3 months or half year or year or the national workability index. That is a specific to 2014 year or the 2021. Others like the food access possibilities and social demographics variables and social capital and crime and safety variables in this. And for here, for we can look at the this column. This data is in various geometries, like the raster file is just a grid file, and all the other like the polygons data. So we can I'll share the this slides to show how we conduct the data linkages. For now, just I mentioned we have different kinds of exposome data in various polygon file. Yeah, so we can translate the various data sets into the different like zip5 or zip9 levels data. We all conduct formatted and pre-processing steps to translate. So finally, and then we can use the zip5 or zip9 codes to link the exposome data into the specific patient level data, like the demographic or other data. So this is a generalized process. Now we can conduct the zip5, zip9 level linkages for the exposome data. For we know, as you the zip9 information maybe have 40% missing. So we can also have another option to do the exposome linkage like the zip5 level linkage. Yeah, the zip5 codes maybe only have 10% missing. So that is, we all have 90% data can conduct the linkages. But now the zip5 linkages is under developing. We have finished the 4 out of 10 exposome linkages. But I think we will the zip5 linkages will be available very soon. Yeah, any questions?
Thank you. That's very helpful. So, can we also look at the exposomes at the census tract level, and how that's associated with certain health outcomes and things like that?
Yes, we can look at the specific variables within the ACS. For now, the almost 20 or to about 40 variables we can be available. Yeah, like the ethnicity or the or something like the year, the percent of the degree or the household income data. Yes, but actually we have already translated almost 1,000 variables within the ECS into the zip9 level. So next time maybe we can include these variables in our near future, but that will depends on, yeah.
Thanks so much. I think one thing to mention is that OneFlorida is able to do the re-identification. So they work with individual partners, contributing data to OneFlorida. If you're interested in using OneFlorida to identify patients who who are potentially going to be can be recruited for your study, you can use OneFlorida, identify this cohort, and then work with their system to re-identify their individual patients through the using the honest broker program. I think this might be related to the question uh, Bonnie about looking at additional data with individuals with cancer. Um, but maybe that process, Brittany, do you want to explain further about that process, how that process would typically look
So
like?
it would depend on what you're looking for, but for cancer patients in particular, we have several cancer centers in One Florida, so we do have all of the medical record data for those cancer centers. So we can query based on procedures, ICD codes, timeframes, and then if you wanted to look at medical record notes, additional imaging, we do not have imaging within One Florida. Additional imaging data, things like that, we would re-engage our partners to re-identify those patients and pull note data. Do we have any idea of how many adult cancer patients are covered and for what years? That's a great question. I'm not sure of the number. Let me take that back to our programming team and see if we can find that. But we do have data on cancer patients starting from 2012 to present. So if they received care at our cancer centers during that time frame, we would have that data. In terms of individual patients, I'm not sure. So let me find that out and I'll be happy to send that information back over to the FSU team.
Great, thank you. I think, in my understanding, because we previously used OneFlorida for one of my previous R21 project funded by NIA, focused on colorectal cancer and breast cancer. I remember the cohort is fairly substantial because you can imagine there are more than 20 million patients in Florida as a
Yes.
whole. So, if you look at cancer prevalence and looking at the number of patients, it's definitely a very big number. But I can also work with Bonnie to look at I2B2 as well. But Brittany, if you can provide some information on cancer type breakdown, I think that would be really useful. I know One Florida has a page explaining some sort of a cohort um characteristics. I think I can probably find that page to share so that we can save some effort. But it should be there on the webpage of One Florida um
It might
data
not have,
overview.
yeah, it might not
Yeah.
have like actual hard numbers. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to do that. Also, it'd be a great exercise within I2B2 as well, because
Yeah.
you'd be able to see the I2 from our numbers in I2B2, what those numbers are.
Yeah. I'm looking at this webpage. It says like there are about 1.3 million patients with cancer in the current version. I'm not sure if how recent the data set is, but this is the web page I'm looking at from One
Yep.
Florida site. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think is a little out of date. We recently
Mhm.
updated our website, so I'm working on updating all of those numbers. So there's more patients than what you see there.
Mhm. Great. Any other questions? I know um we are out of time. So Fabio has a follow-up questions on do you have a big number of projects going on FSU? Um, yeah, Brent, do I have a like rough number of projects ongoing at FSU using One Florida Data Trust?
That's a great question. I want to say we have about five or six currently that are that are with FSU. I don't know that number off the top of my head. I understand the cost per project does sound daunting. It is because the complexity of the data. So it is the number of programming hours that involves the cleaning, the ETLing, and then identifying that cohort. However, most of our projects are between I would say, anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000. So even is supported on an RO1 or things like that if you're looking for data as your primary outcome. And I will make sure that I send over the recording to the FSU team. Our participants tracked over time. Participants are tracked over time. So as long as they're attending, as long as they still receive medical care at a partner clinic, we have their full medical record data. I always like to joke that if you will look into OneFlorida for me, you would see my entire life history. I started going to UF Health as an 18-year-old freshman at UF, and my entire medical record is there. So you would have me from, 2012 moving forward. That's a good example.
Great. Thank you so much. And I will send the slides and also the recording of this one when they're available. And thank everyone for being part of this, and also especially thank Brittany, and also Chen Rong and Megan for joining this meeting and giving this presentation. I really appreciate that.
Thank
And also
everyone.
thank
Thank you all so much. And I just put my email in the chat in case anyone has any questions. There's also contact information on the website. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful Friday.
Yeah, have a nice weekend, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.